Hello my friends, my name is Luisa and this is the Lulu Blue Studio. Today I'm going to guide you through the process of painting this loose style flower piece. And in particular, this is going to be a tutorial perfect for beginners. I'm going to keep everything super simple. And I'm going to share all my best tips on loose style flower painting. Are you ready to paint with me? Let's start together. So I'm going to share all my best tips during this tutorial, and the first tip that I want to share with you is which sort of paper to use for your watercolor flower painting. My recommendation for you, if you are a beginner, is to start with cold pressed paper, and in particular 100% cotton. This is, from my experience, the sort of paper that will help you the most to immediately see the best results. In particular, the paper I'm using is Saunders Waterford, but there are many other brands that you can find on the internet. So starting with good quality paper is my first recommendation for you to obtain the best results on watercolor flower painting. And now, diving into this tutorial, my recommendation for you is to start painting your floral composition from your hero flowers. In particular, this is going to be one of my hero flowers, which is a very simple flower that I created just using a round brush in size 12. And I created first the center, mixing a little bit of yellow ochre and lemon yellow and using mainly the tip of my brush. And then I created the petals just by dragging some Quinacridone Magenta from the center to the external part of the page, or you can create the petals from the external part, dragging the pigment to the center of this flower. I added a little bit of pink ink into some of the petals to create a little bit more contrast. And I'm creating a second hero flower, a second major flower like the one I've just created, in orange color. Basically, I created the center in yellow ochre and lemon yellow using the tip of my brush, and then I'm adding a little bit of transparent orange to create the petals of this second flower. To create some variety and give the impression that these flowers are still in loose style but a little bit more realistic, I recommend you to create some petals that are more concentrated in color, while creating other petals that are with a much lighter color value. It means that you remove part of the pigment in the cup of water and you drag the pigment along the page and you create petals that are much lighter. You can always add, through the wet on wet technique, a little bit more pigment into the petals that are still not completely dry. So this second flower I've created is very similar to the first one. It has a slightly different perspective, and I've added between these two main flowers some filling flowers in white color. In order to achieve this white color, I've just used a little bit of Mars Black. It's a very diluted sort of color, and I've used the belly of the brush to create this sort of elongated round shapes. I have created a couple of other flowers, and now just with the tip of the brush, I'm adding some green elements into the white wildflowers I created between the orange and the pink one. I've decided to add the green now because when the green touches the white, since the white is still wet, I can obtain some beautiful blending effects. And I'm adding some stems also to the other two small flowers I've created in the upper part of the page. At this point, I'm adding a few secondary flowers in the upper corner in the left side, and I'm using a very light mixture of Quinacridone Magenta. So my other tip in this moment is to identify, for example, which ones are your main flowers in your composition, remembering to use, for example, a more concentrated amount of pigment. And for example, to create secondary flowers like I've done in this moment, using a less concentrated amount of pigment, which means using pigment with a higher percentage of water. In the lower part of the page, I'm adding a flower that is very similar in shape to the one that I've created in the upper part of the page. And this is achieved by using a mixture of Mars Black, very diluted, with a little bit of yellow ochre, and just tapping the page, the paper, with the tip of the brush and creating a round shape. I'm adding some similar elements also in the upper part between the two main hero flowers, just tapping the paper with the tip of the brush and a very light mixture of green and yellow. This will give the impression that there are very small flowers in the background of this painting. And at this point, I'm creating another flower in the upper right corner of this page because I noticed that there is a white space. And the way I'm creating this is starting from the center and just creating the center using the tip of the brush, and then using the belly and the tip of the brush to drag the yellow pigment and to create these petals. I go back to highlight some of the petals with some more concentrated lemon yellow, and I create a shape for which this flower is turned toward the upper left corner of this page. And to complete this whole composition, I've decided to add a similar flower underneath. I'm using a similar mixture of color, but I am changing the perspective of this flower that is turned toward the upper right corner of the page. I'm adding a little bit of more concentrated transparent orange into some of the petals to let them pop compared to the others. If you are looking to learn or to improve your watercolor skills and you love to paint flowers, I encourage you to download for free the Beginner's Guide to Watercolor Flower Painting, which is an ebook I wrote for you with all my tips on watercolor flower painting. It is great if you are a beginner and if you are willing to improve your watercolor skills. You can find the link to this ebook down in the description below. Also, if you like this video, press like down below, and if you want to support me with the creation of other videos like this one, please subscribe to this channel. It really helps me to create free content for you to watch. Thank you! Back to our painting, I'm using a little bit of Cobalt Blue and just the tip of this round brush to create some sort of filling flowers that are framing the main flowers I have created. I'm just holding this brush in a quite loose way. I'm not holding too tight this brush between my fingers, and I'm not adding too much pressure to create these little dots that are these filling flowers I want to create. I keep in mind to change the color value of Cobalt Blue to have a few elements that are much darker in color value, and I then remove a part of the pigment in a cup of water to create other dots that are much lighter. And then I mix a little bit of Sap Green and I add with the very tip of this brush a few green elements into the small dots that I've created in Cobalt Blue. In this moment, the Cobalt Blue is still wet, so when I add these green elements, I will allow the green to blend together with the blue. This is an effect that I actually like, but if you don't want the green to blend with the blue and you don't want to have any wet on wet happening, just be careful not to touch the blue with the tip of your brush. For this composition, I've decided to add a few stems, and so I'm adding a few brush strokes in Sap Green and Azomethine Green Yellow that start from the flower and go down to the bottom of the page. Using this same brush, I'm adding a few leaves, and I'm taking advantage of the shape of this brush to create the leaves. So my tip here for you is to remember that the easiest and most effective way to create leaves is just to take advantage of the shape of your round brush and just drag your green color, your green paint onto the paper just by adding some pressure from the tip to the belly of your brush. Additionally, remember to create the first set of leaves in light color values. It means that these leaves are not very concentrated in color. And then you can add other sets of leaves with the darker color values. You can also create a few leaves just by letting the tip of your brush touch the paper and create a sort of C shapes onto the page. These are going to be more elongated leaves, but very effective to create some movement on your floral composition. At this point, with a very fine brush in size 6, this is a round brush, I'm adding the center to the main flower, and I'm using darker colors, a little bit of Mars Black together with a little bit of yellow ochre, and I'm just tapping the center of the flower. I'm adding also some more concentrated transparent orange onto the yellow flowers I created in the upper right corner of the page. And I like all the centers of these flowers to really be dark to allow them to pop from the composition. With the same mixture of transparent orange and a little bit of Scarlet Red, I'm using this round brush to highlight the petals of this orange flower, and so I am adding a few brush strokes. My tip in this case is to remember that you can add some layers on your flowers when the first layer of the petals is completely dry, and you can add as many layers as you want in order to have as many details or as little details as you prefer. Adding layers is a very effective form for me to relax and enjoy my paintings, but it's not a sort of technique that I use all the time. Some of my paintings, in fact, don't have any layering technique, or they have a very limited layering effect all over the painting. I'm adding a few contrasting details in the small flowers I've created all over this composition, and basically I am just adding a few brush strokes, a few layers, but these layers are very light and you almost don't see them. And my final tip for you at this moment is to remember to add contrasting brush strokes in your green elements. This means to add a few contrasting brush strokes in darker green. In this case, for example, I'm using Cobalt Green Dark, and basically I am sort of adding some shadows to the leaves, and I am highlighting some parts of the composition compared to the others. And these green elements, darker green elements, will allow me to frame even more my flowers and highlight the main hero flowers and show the little flowers all around. You can add as many details or layers as you like. I am, in this case, adding a few more details onto the yellow flowers and in the center part of the flowers. You can stop much earlier and you can enjoy what you have created even with less layers, but I'm just showing you what it is possible and how you can create even more details on your flower compositions. I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Let me know if you painted along with me and if you like this composition. Also, let me know what you would like to see next. See you in my next tutorial.